Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, week number 11, episode number 2, as we are hitting the middle portion of the Saturday betting card. We got our two-hole hitter, Matt Josephs from ESPN Richmond at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. Matt, welcome in, bud. How you feeling?
Feeling all right. Last week was a tough loss. We didn't give out a good even number for Kansas. And once again, another slow first half. Kansas was not very good in the first half, and then they scored a lot in the second half. Not enough for those in the podcast. So we try and bounce back this week.
Hey, bounce back week 11. Here we go. It was a down week for me as well, Matt. We're getting into it, guys. We're going 1-4-1, 1-4-2, the rotation numbers all the way down to Texas State and UL Lafayette. So we got about 15 games here. Starting off 3:30 Eastern in the Hard Rock, Miami, Florida. It is Syracuse on the road against the Miami Hurricanes. We are seeing the Canes minus 28 and a hook as the home favorite, 45.5 being the total. Syracuse alum, Mid-Major Matt, throw it over to you. What are you thinking here in this ACC clash in South Florida?
I mean, it's really all about if Miami wants to be there, and they do. I'm assuming they still have a very small chance to win the ACC and make the ACC championship. They're 2-2. There's 5 teams ahead of them at least. A bunch of teams with 1 loss, and of course Virginia, as we all expected, with no losses so far in conference. So Miami still has a small shot, but it's not a very large one. We already know there's a couple of injuries of note. Wide receiver CJ Daniels is out. OJ Frederick Jr., a corner, is out. And then running back Mark Fletcher Jr. is questionable for this game. So Miami's got some injuries to certainly worry about here. But if they're focused, they should win this game by a lot. Syracuse rearranged their offensive staff. The wide receiver coach is gone. The QB coach is now the tight ends coach. The quality control coach is the wide receivers coach. And they've done all these things. It's not going to help. They started a true freshman quarterback last week. It was brutal. It went about his way as you thought. So Miami should win this game by a lot. If they're focused, I guess we'll learn early on if they are focused. But I think Miami takes care of business here.
And Matt, you go to ACC Media Days. You cover the conference as closely as anybody I know. What's your thoughts on your projection of how many teams get into the playoffs, and who do you think is the ultimate team? Do you really think Miami, the small shot you have, or you think it's going to be Virginia or SMU or another team? What are you thinking?
I think it's going to be one team. I think this conference is getting one in because the committee rankings so far, with Virginia being the highest team at 14, I think the committee is telling you what they think of this conference. Now, there were 5 ACC teams ranked in the top 25 by the committee, but they were all towards the bottom, and Virginia is the team that's undefeated. So I think this conference, unfortunately, is getting only one team in. I know DraftKings occasionally puts out the market of over-under how many teams a conference gets. You know, if the price is right, I might take under 1.5 for the ACC because I just don't know if they're going to get a second team in. UVA can't get in if they lose another game. UVA and some of these other teams don't exactly have great resumes. So I think they're only getting one in most likely.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. As we got Stanford, North Carolina up next, staying in the ACC, 4:30 Eastern. It is the Tar Heels, minus 7.5 as the home favorite, 41 and a hook being the total. Stanford, of course, cross country here. But hey, the Tar Heels 7.5. Can they cover more than a touchdown, Matt?
I don't know. I mean, last week was great for North Carolina. They get the win on Halloween in Syracuse. They look great. Everything seems to be good. But I think people are kind of forgetting that North Carolina is not a good football team, and Bill Belichick's not doing well in college. The problem is Stanford here. We've seen what Stanford does on the road. Stanford is a completely different team on the road outside. And when they make the trip east, it's not exactly gone well for them. They named Elijah Brown their starting quarterback. He is a redshirt freshman who is making the trip. North Carolina's defense has been all right so far this season. It's been the offense that's more of the issue here. So maybe the under is worth a look here, potentially. Stanford's team total 16.5. You could probably get a reasonable number on the juice on the under for 17.5. But also, if North Carolina reverts to the bad team that they had been most of the season, this could be a bit of a trouble spot for UNC.
We'll head to the Big Ten up next. Indiana and Penn State. We're seeing the Hoosiers minus 14.5, even a minus 15 out there as the road favorite, 48 and a hook being the total. Hoosiers, number 2 in the country, having to win by more than 2 touchdowns here to cover this number, Matt.
Yeah, how crazy is this line considering what the game probably would have been before the season? I mean, if you think about before the season, Penn State might have been favored because they would have had Drew Aller and they would have had a pretty good record themselves. Of course, now with the injury to Aller, James Franklin getting fired, guys leaving the program, it's not what we thought it would be. And once again, this is, I never want to get in the way of a Curt Cignetti bus. I mean, this guy doesn't care about anything other than covering spreads and scoring a lot of points. Last week against Maryland, it was a slow start. We thought Maryland maybe was going to have a chance. And then but when you look up, it's 55-10. So, Penn State, if they're any sort of motivated, maybe this thing's close a little bit early. They did just lose at Ohio State, physical game. Now they're going to play another physical game against a really good opponent here. People who listen to this podcast know I'm not a guy who lays that many points here, but I feel like maybe looking at Indiana to score a lot of points here because this is just what Curt Cignetti does. His offense is geared towards that. And remember, Fernando Mendoza last week didn't have a great game statistically. He's still in the mix for the Heisman, so you know that Curt is going to try and help out his statistics to maybe keep him in the Heisman mix.
Shout out to everybody chiming in here on YouTube, on Twitter as well, at Midmajor Matt, at Drew Martin Betts, also YouTube, Every Game on the Board, and wherever you're downloading your podcast at, Apple, Spotify, Every Game on the Board podcast. Shout out to Mark here saying, love the show every week. Keep up the excellent work. Thanks for that, Mark. And Nick saying Indiana covers. So looking to lay the number there. Matt, you just talked about, not usually on the side of laying big numbers on the road. Well, we get another one here. Ohio State and Purdue, maybe a little bit different. It is a bigger number, -29.5, -30 is out there. That is the Buckeyes as the road favorite, 48 and a hook being the total. Buckeyes on the road to face the Boilermakers.
Yeah. I mean, look, this isn't one of those games where Ohio State could do as much or as little as they want to. They beat them 45-0 last year at home. There's no look-ahead spot. They're hosting UCLA next week. So Ohio State's going to be focused for this one. Purdue's coming off the tough loss at Michigan. They played really well at Michigan. They lost 21-16 in that game. Purdue's team total 7.5. Pretty crazy, to say the least. I don't like these games, Drew, because it's whatever Ohio State wants. If Ohio State wants to score a lot of points, they were named number one by the committee. You could debate whether or not them or Indiana should have been number one. I mean, you really splitting hairs here with regards to one's at 1 and one's at 2. So style points. Remember, now I think we're starting to get into style points time for these teams in the committee's eyes. So Ohio State will probably want to run up the score to make sure they stay at number one in next week's playoff rankings.
Yeah, good point. Stylistically starts to matter around this time in November in college football as we head to Piscataway up next. Maryland and Rutgers. This one, Scarlet Knights -1. There is Pick'em out there as the home favorite, 59 being the total. So Maryland at Rutgers, competitive price tag here, Matt.
So, I mean, I don't know what to do here because you've got a Maryland team who has had several really good squads come to College Park. The first two times it was Washington and Illinois. They had fourth quarter leads. They lost. Then they had Indiana last week in their building. I think they scored really early, and then, of course, Indiana blew them out. And now they hit the road to play Rutgers. And I saw a quote from somebody that said, Rutgers is on pace to give up more yards per play than any defense in the Big Ten this century. Rutgers has a historically bad defense this year. Between injuries and just not being good systematically, Rutgers has been an atrocious defense so far. So any sort of game involving Rutgers, you probably look at the over. You probably look at maybe the other team's team total over. I know that you're asking a Maryland team that, is on the road, and certainly you've got a young quarterback there, and it's getting towards the end of the season. So how healthy is he? What's he looking like here? But Rutgers' defense right now is on a historically bad pace, and so I'm not getting involved with them. I'll look to Maryland to some sort, whether it's team total or spread.
Matt, we'll get back in your wheelhouse here. ACC action, Wake Forest and Virginia. 7 o'clock Eastern kick in Charlottesville. Should be a pretty good atmosphere. UVA -6.5 at most shops. There is a -7 out there. 48 being the total. I'll tell you this, Matt, the Demon Deacons, they were a no-show in Tallahassee. I know because I bet on them, and they got blown out against the Seminoles. Now they're going on the road against Virginia. Virginia sees their name in the college football playoff. This is an interesting handicap. 6.5, the ultimate equalizer. What are you thinking in Charlottesville Saturday night?
So I think Virginia wins this game. I don't know necessarily if they cover. This could be a good money line piece with something else. Virginia's in this rare spot where they actually have a look-ahead factor. Next week, they play at Duke in a game that has massive implications because Duke is one game behind them in the standings. This is a situation where, was last week's game for Wake like the norm? Or was it just a rare bad game for them and they'll bounce back this week? Like, obviously I had Wake over 4.5 wins for this season. It was a victory that I won because they're at, I think, 5 or 6 right now. They could have had another one with the Georgia Tech game. So Wake is pretty impressive. And I like Wake's defense. The problem is I don't like Wake's offense. It really comes down to Robbie Ashford, who you're familiar with, Damon Claiborne, the running back, and then Chris Barnes, the wide receiver, the freshman wide receiver, who you just try and get out in the space and he does stuff. UVA was 11th in the committee's playoff bracket. They were 14th in the top 25. So they're going to be looking potentially for style points if they know they even need style points. Like, this is a situation UVA never thought they'd be in. I think they win this game, but the fact that it's not a larger number to me, Drew, is interesting. So I'm going to stay away from the spread. I'm going to probably use them in a money line parlay with something else around that kind of area to give me something decent price-wise.
Yeah, you bring up Ashford. He's the guy that went to Oregon, then transferred to Auburn. Now he finds himself at Wake Forest. Like, he's serviceable. He's a pretty good athlete. It's just throwing the football at times. Like, he really struggles, Matt. I mean, like, his accuracy, it's almost like, man, how could you be a quarterback in Division I football this long and still have those issues with you? It's kind of head scratching at times watching him play.
Yeah, I mean, well, before I clinched my win total, Drew, watching their games and needing them to win, there would be plays he makes that are really good. Yeah. And then there's plays that you're like, wait a second, what are you even doing? So, like, he was a very frustrating guy to watch, but like when he's on, and he's got a good wide receiver, but like this is a team that wins more with their defense, and the offense does just enough. Last week, obviously, the defense didn't show up and the offense didn't show up. I liked, I kind of liked Florida State last week to kind of come out of the bye week and be refreshed. So I'm guessing that this could be just a 1-week thing with Wake Forest and they play better on Saturday.
We'll see there in Charlottesville. A good one Saturday night as we head to the MAC up next. I believe it's just one MACtion game on Saturday with them playing on the weekdays here, but it's Bowling Green and Eastern Michigan. And of course, when we're talking Eastern Michigan, Matt, you want them as a dog. They're not a dog here, though. It's -2, -2.5. So it's a competitive price tag. A pretty good game in the MAC. 50 and a hook being the total. We're talking Bowling Green on the road, on the gray turf against Eastern Michigan.
So Bowling Green fired their offensive coordinator this week. I don't think there's a bump for something like that, but they look brutal last week against Buffalo. I had Bowling Green last week. Part of it was just I had been tired of watching Buffalo lose me my win total, so I just bet on Bowling Green. Of course, Bowling Green didn't show up, so maybe I have to bet against Buffalo the rest of the season to help out my Bowls. But Bowling Green's been brutal offensively, and that's putting their defense in bad situations. Their defense is not terrible, but it's on the field so much that it kind of gets worn down and it just doesn't play very well. And then, look, Eastern Michigan coming off the bye. I found a couple interesting statistics. Eastern Michigan is tied for first nationally in red zone offense. Every single time they've been in the red zone, they've scored points. Two teams are the only two teams in the country that have done this. Eastern Michigan and Oklahoma are the only two teams in the country that have converted 100% of their red zone trips, which is pretty crazy. Here's another great stat. Since 2016, and this is why we like Chris Creighton as an underdog, Eastern Michigan has appeared in 62 single-score regular season games, the second highest total in the country behind Northern Illinois with 65. So this team plays close games time and time and time again. That's why we like Chris Creighton as an underdog. I actually like them as a favorite here, Drew. I'm going to take Eastern Michigan on the money line. I just like them coming off the bye week, being a little refreshed, paying off the red zone offense here. I really like them in this situation. Bowling Green with the offensive coordinator gone and just, having not played very well lately. I'll take Eastern Michigan here on the money line.
Yeah, I'm seeing -$1.25, -125 money line on Eastern Michigan. So if you're wanting to go that route, not lay the number, I'm kind of with you. And you bring up the red zone scoring percentage. I think we just talked about it with Jeff Nadeau in the first episode. Is that something you think is repeatable? Because I do. It's how well you run the football. It's how accurate your quarterback is in the red zone. There's less space, therefore accuracy mattering more. So it's something I think is repeatable in handicapping. Do you?
Well, it's something that you have a pretty good kicker. somebody who's going
That
to,
too.
make
Yep.
field goals. Because they obviously aren't paying off of those with touchdowns, or else they'd have a better record. But like, you have a guy who makes his field goals, and so I think that. I think it's something where at certain years that just is something that works out. Look, I don't think they're going to finish the season 100%. I don't think Oklahoma's going to finish the season 100%. They're going to miss a field goal, or they're going to throw an interception or something, but it is something that gives me confidence that when Eastern Michigan gets down to the red zone, they know what to do. Whereas Bowling Green, who just fired their offensive coordinator, struggling offensively, they are certainly going to be in a bit of a disarray on that side of the ball.
Matt, we'll head to Starkville, Mississippi up next, 155, 156, kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern, 11 a.m. local time kick. It is Georgia, -8.5 or -9 right now, 57 being the total. Seen a lot of people like in the Battle of Bulldogs, the home Bulldogs, Mississippi State plus the points. Any feel here with Georgia at Mississippi State?
So, I mean, I'll lean on you here, but to me, first off, there's a chance of rain that I think will make things interesting in this game. But nasty sandwich spot for Georgia, world's largest cocktail party. Then they play at home against Texas. Now, granted, Texas is playing better, so that is still a huge game. But like, this is a sandwich spot, and the defense has a bunch of injuries right now for Georgia, and that's something you'll certainly watch as the participation reports continue to come out. The other thing I noticed, they're 1-4 against the spread the last 5 years after the Florida game. So look, and that's with better Georgia teams than they have this year. So I think Mississippi State can take advantage of some things. I might either look at like a over 2.5 touchdowns for Mississippi State or over 23.5 points. I think they can find some success here offensively. I don't know if they're going to win the game, but Georgia's defensive injuries are something I'm going to be watching as we get closer to Saturday. And if certain guys are out, I'll be looking to take advantage of it. Mississippi State's offense has been pretty good this year. I like their quarterback. So I'll watch the injury reports as we get closer and closer to start time, but I might be involved Mississippi State team total or touchdowns here.
Interesting take, Matt. I like the breakdown. Yeah, what Mississippi State, they snapped the 16-game conference losing streak, I believe. And then I love the trend you threw out there. Georgia, 1-4 against the spread after the cocktail party. That's a good one. That might come into play here. All right, we got next one up. Another one you know a lot about, Liberty, very close to where you're talking right now, hosting Missouri State. 50.5 being the total, -8. That's the Flames. -7 and a hook is out there as well. That's Liberty as the home favorite. I like this Missouri State team. I've won some money with them. They got a pretty good quarterback, fifth-year senior, Jacob Clark, I believe is his name. But Liberty at home, laying more than a touchdown. What do you think?
Yeah, I might look at the over in this game. Liberty's defense has not been very good, and I think Liberty's offense found some things last week against Delaware. They won the game 59-30. You're getting a decent total here. I think both teams can find some success. Remember, Missouri State still in their first year as an FBS team. And, I think the grind of playing an FBS schedule week after week, I think eventually we'll get to them. We're heading towards the end of the season. When you're an FCS team, you play an FBS team once or twice, maybe depending upon what your payroll is or what your budget is and how much money you need for the athletic department. Missouri State's playing these teams time and time again. They won last week. They beat FIU, I believe, as an underdog or a slight favorite in that game. But, I think this game's an over. I think that both teams can find some success here. And I think at some point we have to watch out for when Missouri State drops off because they realize they're finally playing an FBS schedule and because every week there's going to be a tough opponent coming up. So I like the over here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's only 50.5, 51 at some shops. So maybe over Missouri State and Liberty. We got next one up, UAB and Rice. The Rice Owls, -2 and a hook at home, 53.5, the total in Houston, Texas.
So Rice is very injured right now. There's a lot of injuries. Certainly want to watch their participation report as we get closer. But as we get later and later in the season with these teams that have no real shot at a bowl game or very little shot at a bowl game, preparing for a triple option team, especially like a hybrid triple option team like Rice, it's how much do you want to do it? How much do you want to, during the week, prepare for an offense like this and prepare to get chop blocked and prepare for all sorts of different things that you're not used to playing and you won't see again probably this season. So that's my question with UAB. I think UAB's offense can find some success. Rice's defense is brutal. But the question is, can their offense work here? UAB is fourth in the conference in third down conversion. They're converting nearly 50% of their third downs in AAC play. So UAB is able to extend drives. And Rice, coming off the loss to Memphis, they are 136th in tackles per loss per game. So they're getting tackled behind the line a lot. Now against UAB's defense, I think you can make that up a little bit because UAB's defense is pretty bad. I'll be watching the participation reports as we get closer. I think I like Rice in this game, but I'm not going to lock anything in yet until, whenever the last one comes out. I think Friday night or Saturday morning.
All right, we got Big 12 action up next. It's Iowa State and TCU, 3:30 Eastern kick. It is the Horned Frogs minus 7-point home favorites. There is a 6.5 out there, 57 and a hook being the total in this Big 12 clash.
So this might be the other half of my moneyline parlay with UVA. I like TCU here. I don't know what's going on with Iowa State. They're losing a lot of home games in a row. They had the great situation with BYU off the Holy War. They didn't take care of business. They had the situation with Arizona State. We had this game last week, Drew, and we talked about, or at least I did. I like Jeff Sims as a quarterback, and they get the win against Iowa State. You've got an Iowa State team that's lost 4 in a row since the 5-0 start. They have a linebacker, Will McLaughlin, out for the season, a safety, Tayshawn James, who will be out for a while. So Iowa State's defense is starting to get some injuries. And coming up against a TCU team off their bye week with Hoover at quarterback, I think TCU can find some success offensively against Iowa State. I just don't know where the Cyclones' head's at. They didn't play very well at home in their last couple of games. Now they hit the road to play a team that's fresh and coming off their bye week. I think TCU wins this game, so I might be looking at pairing TCU and UVA in a money line parlay here.
Makes sense, Matt. As we got Texas A&M, Missouri up next. A&M minus 7-point road favorites, 48 being the total in Columbia, Missouri.
Texas A&M is third in the college football playoff rankings, and so they're in the situation where they got to keep winning. They got to keep winning with style points. I don't know if they're going to pass Indiana or Ohio State, but you're definitely not going to if you don't win these games handily. Both these teams coming off a bye week, so there's no advantage there. Texas A&M will be without one of their best linebackers, Scooby Williams. He is missing the game with an injury. Missouri already has listed as Bo Pribula as out for the game, and their tight end Brett Norfleet as questionable. I didn't like Bo Pribula as their starting quarterback. I don't know what they have behind. Now, granted, they've had 2 weeks, you would think, to get some reps for the backup quarterbacks here. But, Texas A&M's in the situation where they need to win this game. They need to win this game by style points. I don't love laying that points in the road, but I think Texas A&M wins this game because I think they're the better team. And I think coming off of the bye week for them, especially allowing Marcel Reed to get healthier and to kind of, get ready for this home stretch, I think the Aggies get the win on the road here.
Yeah, good point with Pribula. I had that in my notes as well in terms of the quarterback being banged up. I didn't think he was all that great of a player for Missouri either, but like you just alluded to, it depends who's behind them. And off of an off week, you would think that it's more preparation time for the backup. But yeah, it's kind of a tricky handicap, if you will. We got next one up, 12 noon Eastern, I believe 11 a.m. local kick, BYU and Texas Tech. Maybe the game of the weekend. I believe College Game Day is in Lubbock, and it's Texas Tech minus 10, as high as minus 10.5. as the home favorite, 52 and a hook being the total. Big one here in the Big 12. You talked about BYU and the run they've been on. Texas Tech, one of the best teams in the conference as well. What are you thinking in West Texas?
So this is an important game for my Utah futures because I have Utah to make the conference championship here. Now I need a lot of help still. Utah's 4-2, BYU's 5-0, and Texas Tech is 5-1, and they don't have the tiebreaker on either of them. But the one thing to look at here, wind could be an issue here. Like solid wind gusts could be an issue here, and so certainly that could even some things out, especially if you're going into the wind. It might help you if you're going if you're going with the wind, that'll help you. If you're going against the wind, that's going to at least make you a little bit one-dimensional. So watch the weather forecast as we get closer for this game. Texas Tech is interesting. One of their defensive players, one of their best defensive players, Skylar Gill Howard, has been listed as out in the early participation reports. But you've got Bear Bachmeier going into a really hostile atmosphere here for BYU. I don't know how many really tough road games BYU has had so far this season. If you look at their schedule so far, they played at East Carolina, they played at Colorado, they played at Arizona, and then they just played at Iowa State. So, one tough atmosphere to say the least, but Iowa State is, spiraling down. They are coming off a bye week, so that gives them a couple weeks to really study Texas Tech. I kind of want to play BYU here plus the points. It feels like it's too much, but I also feel like it could be a little bit of a trap here because I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, BYU's undefeated in conference, and they've been really good this season. Why are they a 10-point underdog? I've got to take them. So maybe Vegas wants us to take BYU when Texas Tech is the side here.
I'm reading the Lubbock, Texas weather report. Sunshine and windy, 72 sunny, and 15 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts, Matt. And it makes me think, I always go back to playing in Lubbock, and I remember Cliff Kingsbury saying he recruits quarterbacks when he was the coach there that have very good zip and spin on the football to cut through the wind because it's windy in West Texas a lot. It always, because if you got flutter on your ball when you throw the football, it can kind of get caught up there. So it is something to watch. Great point there, Matt. We got Auburn and Vanderbilt up next, 4:00 Eastern, I believe on SEC Network. It is Vandy -6.5 at home, 45.5 being the total. Of course, some changes here with the Auburn program, but going on the road in Nashville should be a fun environment. 6.5. That's Vandy as the home favorite.
Yeah, chance of rain for this game. Auburn fired their head coach. And so, it's funny. I had Jimbo Fisher on my radio show from the ACC network, and I asked him about why teams play better after coaches get fired. And he said, basically, it's a lack of pressure. Like the kids feel pressure at times to play really well for coaches so they don't get fired, which is kind of a naive statement because in the other direction, it could be the kids really don't like the head coach and so they don't want to win the game. But it does make you think that if you are dealing with pressure with a coach on the hot seat and then he's gone and you're playing for an interim guy and maybe you really like the interim guy, that's why you play better in this situation. Now, I don't know if Auburn can do that. They're going to be without Champ Anthony. I saw he was listed as out for this game, and Ashton Daniels, the Stanford transfer, is going to be the quarterback for this game. I mean, you're wearing the Auburn hat, Drew. Do you think that your team has a chance to cover this weekend?
Yeah, I think they got a chance. I think Auburn's better than the record. Now, you can call me biased. You can call me a homer. I'm fine with that. But I've seen them play a bunch this season. And obviously the Kentucky game was ugly, particularly on offense. But, I mean, talent-wise, they're right there with Vanderbilt. It's not a tough trip to Nashville. There'll be a lot of Auburn people there. But I don't know, man. This is a tough one because Vanderbilt's a team I'm not looking to go against. So this isn't one I'm going to be betting. But, yeah, I could see Auburn rattling off a couple wins. I really could, man.
Yeah, remember this game, the game last week at Texas was a lot more of a blowout, and then Pavia activated hero mode and nearly got them to win that game. And so he's going to be really motivated. He's on the outside looking in for the Heisman right now. So, he wants to keep playing really well. And of course, the college football playoff is potentially in Vanderbilt's future, which is crazy to say. So they are the better team here. I don't know if Auburn experiences that bump that makes them play better. And the difference is, Drew, we talked about Oklahoma State when they fired Mike Gundy. They got the bump. They covered the next game, but they didn't win. So it's not a guarantee that the team's going to win after getting a coach fired, but they still could cover in this situation.
Yeah, it's another interesting handicap. It's likely not one I'm going to be involved with, but if you made me bet it, man, I'd probably go with Auburn. I really would, even though a lot points towards Vanderbilt, particularly like at the quarterback position, like you were talking about with Pavia, bringing them back. And I bet on Vanderbilt +3. Some people could get them at 3 and a hook, and they would have covered because they got within 3. But I ended up pushing with them coming back. It was a fun fourth quarter there if you had a Vanderbilt ticket. LSU, Alabama, the game of the century. Alabama -10, 49 and a hook being the total. And I say that tongue in cheek, game of the century, obviously.
Yeah, and this is the first game for LSU since they fired Brian Kelly. So once again, who knows if that means anything for LSU. They're coming off the bye week, which is really interesting. Of course, Alabama's coming off the bye week. Ryan Williams listed as probable for this game. So Ryan Williams, the wide receiver, is going to play in this game. Rain is in the forecast. Now, how much rain, we don't know. We're doing this on Thursday. Weather can certainly change over a 48-hour period, but rain is in the forecast for this game. So that can certainly make some things interesting here. I mean, LSU had such. I feel like if LSU just remembers the offense they were supposed to have before the season, like this could be a closer game, and maybe firing Brian Kelly unlocks that offense. I don't know. I don't know if I want to guess here, Drew, and say, like, look, when we looked at LSU's offense before the season, we thought Nussmeier was going to be a Heisman candidate. We thought that some of their wide receivers were going to have great seasons, and it turned out they just didn't do it. Did they use the bye week to kind of fix some things, and now they're going to play really better down the stretch, or are they a team that's kind of ready to end their season and just kind of move on? I think Alabama wins this game. I don't want to guess what LSU is going to look like coming off the bye week after firing their head coach.
We got one game left for this segment. We'll try to get a best bet out of Matt, the bounce back best bet. The last one we're talking here, Sunbelt action, Texas State, the Bobcats on the road in Lafayette, Louisiana to take on the Ragin' Cajuns. 5 o'clock Eastern kick, -2 and a hook. That is Texas State as the road favorite. There is -3 out there. 63.5 being the total.
I don't know why Texas State's favored in this game. I watched a lot of that game. Remember, Texas State hasn't played since last Tuesday because that was when they lost to JMU 52-20 down in San Marcos. So they've been off for a while, but the problem is they just haven't played very well lately. They're a team that was really hot to start, and then ever since the start of October, they keep losing games, and some of them have been close. This one was not close. So I'm not completely understanding why on a road trip here, they are going to Louisiana, who's coming off a win at South Alabama and being the underdog here. I kind of like Louisiana plus the points here. Like, I don't understand it. I get that Brad Jackson's a good quarterback. I get that Texas State's offense is good and they should be able to find some points here. But like their defense hasn't been very good. And I don't know where their confidence level's at. Like, are they going to use this time off to just kind of refresh themselves and play well down the stretch? Or are they going to continue losing, in which case Louisiana is an easy victory? You know, the Sun Belt is a very tight standings. The West Division is very tight right now. So this is a very important game in terms of deciding who's going to win that Sun Belt conference or even be in the mix potentially. Texas State's 0-4. You know, Louisiana has a small shot at 2-3 here to do some things, but like I kind of lean to the team that's playing a little bit better with regards to Louisiana here in this situation.
You bring up the Sun Belt with the division. I think they're the only one that still does the divisions, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So keeping it old school there in the Sun Belt. Guys, we got Best Bet coming up. We got Matt Josephs at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. A great follow if you like betting information, both in college football, college basketball as well, the NFL. I see you with the VCU kind of sweater on there, Matt. Anything you want to throw out in CBB?
VCU looked really good against Wagner. I think we're going to notice that VCU's offense is going to be a lot better this year with Coach Martelli, and they're going to run. This is going to be a team that's going to run a lot. And speaking of VCU, of course, their old coach was Coach Odom. We saw a little bit different with Virginia. Virginia's offense looked really good. Virginia's defense was pretty good against a bad opponent. I think this year we're going to have to remember Virginia's not going to play 63-57 games this year. I think they're going to be playing a lot higher scoring games. I think their offense is going to be better, and I think at times their defense is going to struggle, but I think it's going to be some fun basketball. And certainly I think VCU can win the Atlantic 10. Watch out for GW. The Revs are my sleeper team in the Atlantic 10. Granted, they were picked, I think, 4th or 5th, but I really like what GW is doing so far this year. We had a question here on YouTube. Matt, do we lay it with JMU? Any quick opinion there, JMU and Marshall? So, look, JMU's defense is all world. They're like top 10 in every category. They're like top 5 in rushing defense. They're like top 10 in overall defense. This is a defense that is one of the best in the country. And it's funny because JMU's defense is right up there with Toledo's defense and San Diego State's defense. Those 3 G5 teams are all really good defensively. I really like JMU in this situation. There's nothing Marshall can throw at JMU that will confuse them. Here's a great stat for you, Drew, and for everybody else. In 4 straight games, JMU's not allowed a second half point. Think about that for a second. Wow. JMU has not allowed, and granted, look, they weren't exactly against great opponents, but to allow anybody not to score in 4 straight second halves So I would almost, if you want to, somehow try and take advantage of that. If at halftime, JMU is going to give up some points potentially in the first half, but if you want to take like a team total under for the second half, it's a tremendous statistic. I like JMU's offense in this situation. Marshall's got a mobile quarterback. They just saw Launch Winfield. They just saw Brad Jackson. They just saw Colton Joseph. They're all kind of the same here. So I think JMU is going to be the more fresh team in this situation. They have one player listed on the participation report, and he's questionable. So I don't see why JMU will lose here. I don't see why JMU's defense will struggle at all. Maybe they give up a touchdown or two in the first half, but like they figure it out at halftime and they shut teams down in the second half. So I think JMU plays well in this situation. I guess the one caveat is it's a noon game. I think Marshall might be in the next time zone over, so it could be an 11 a.m. game. I'm not 100% sure, but like that's the only thing. But like JMU's in a great spot here, and they are so fresh because they last played on Tuesday.
Like that. And just so we got it straight, 4 straight games, defense giving up no scores in the second half for JMU, right?
Yep, 100%. Nothing. Man. They've given up nothing.
Impressive stuff there from JMU. All right, at Mid-Major Matt Josephs, ESPN Richmond. Do we got a best bet for the people?
All right. I think I'm going my guy, Chris Creighton. Give me the Eastern Michigan money line. I just like a team that's going to be 100% in the red zone. I like a team that plays a lot of close games and knows how to win them for sometimes. Bowling Green's in a bit of disarray after firing their offensive coordinator last week. They did not play very well against Buffalo. Give me Eastern Michigan money line here. That way I don't have to worry about field goals or any stuff. Just win me the game, Chris Creighton. I believe in Eastern Michigan this weekend.
Eastern Michigan minus $1.25 on the money line for Matt Joseph's best bet in week 11. Matt, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
No. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I wanted to bring up was JMU, but somebody already did bring up JMU. I know it's so funny watching, Drew. There's been this thing on Twitter between the AAC fans and JMU. Like they're going after each other because of strength of schedule and stuff. And because Memphis and USF, like the only team I think that has a better case than JMU is USF because they have 2 really good wins, but they also have 2 losses. Like Memphis, I don't think like that Arkansas win doesn't mean very much. And yes, they beat USF, but like Memphis, like, I think they're good. They're not great. I think JMU would destroy Memphis if they played each other. So I just think it's funny right now. We've got all these AAC fan bases going after James Madison when there's also San Diego State. Now, granted, San Diego State hasn't beaten anybody so far, but like they've got a really good defense and their offense is starting to turn things around. I think this G5 playoff race is going to be awesome down the stretch, especially since we don't know who the second team is. None of them were ranked in that top 25, Drew, that they gave in the playoff rankings. So it's Memphis, and we have no idea who's second right now.
I think this is where Ed was going with this. Like, do we lay it with JMU? I mean, just looking at JMU's kind of, glimpse view of their record. I mean, they lost that game to Louisville early in the season. It was, by the way, that game, I watched that game. That game was pretty tight for most of the game. And then they've gone on a run here. So what they're sitting at 7-1 on the season. If they run the table and go 11-1, win the Sun Belt, do you think they would get in?
So at 12-1, JMU gets in over probably Navy because Navy's going to lose at least a couple coming up. They play at Notre Dame. That'll be their second loss. They get in over them. I would think they get in over North Texas. North Texas is very North Texas doesn't have any good wins. They beat Navy. That's it. But if Navy keeps losing, that becomes a worse loss. So then it comes down to Tulane, who might lose this weekend to Memphis. Who knows? Then they're eliminated. And then it comes down to Memphis and USF. I think USF needs to lose one more time only because they have 2 great wins so far this season. But, like, I think JMU's right there. I think it's down to Memphis, USF, and JMU. I really do. There are rumors. One of the websites is saying there's a chance that College Game Day will be at Harrisonburg for the Washington State game coming up in a couple weeks when JMU's unveiling the Marvel helmets. They've got the helmets with the Marvel superheroes on them. I think that would be huge for a public exposure for James Madison. But, like, their defense is definitely a playoff level. Their offense is smoking hot right now. I just need a little bit more chaos in the AAC to help them out there, and I think we'll get it because a lot of them are still having to play each other.
Yeah, I almost think to start laying it to Ed's question with JMU because style points might matter. If they are 12-1 Sun Belt champions, I agree with you. If USF runs the table, probably the Bulls are going to take that spot because of their big wins. And they've just looked really good on national TV. I think that more people know about USF. But the problem is, though, I'm looking at USF's schedule here. I mean, they got UTSA tonight, actually, as we're recording this. And then they got Navy next week. If they don't drop either of those two, which they're going to be favored, their other two games are UAB and Rice. They're likely not losing to those two teams. So it would just be in the AAC championship game, another opportunity for USF to lose, Matt. That's the only thing that I think is working against JMU.
Well, so here's the thing that we need to look at is that if you go to the sports books, JMU, I'm looking at a website here that says they're 3-1 to make the playoff, and they're 4-1 in a different place. If you look at USF, they're plus 250 and plus 230. So they have a slightly better chance. Like, look, I think it comes down to, for the committee, do you take the two really good wins that USF has or the two losses that they have? Or do you look at JMU, who's been a steamroller so far and just destroying everybody, has a top 10 defense in the country? And would you rather have one of them in there? Let's be also honest here. Most likely either one will probably lose by a little bit to whoever they play in the playoff. But like, I don't think either of them will get embarrassed as much as maybe Memphis would, who I don't think really belongs. Let me admit this. I think it just comes down to USF and JMU. And then everybody else, like, I know that's going to make North Texas fans mad. I get it. But, like, you've beaten nobody other than the Navy. It's great. You have a great offense. Your defense is okay, but you're not JMU. So, yeah, I think it comes down to USF and JMU for that thing. Even if Memphis doesn't lose the rest of the season, I still put JMU's resume up there with Memphis's.
Man, yeah, this is getting tough to break down. And then, of course, could Memphis and USF play each other in the AAC championship game again?
I mean, yeah, it's certainly possible. There are 6 teams with one loss in the American right now. I mean, look, East Carolina has one loss. And if East Carolina somehow, here's the interesting thing, Drew, if East Carolina somehow wins the AAC is getting shut out because nobody else is getting in then. And then JMU probably does get that G5 playoff berth. So if that's the ultimate chaos here, is East Carolina makes the AAC championship game and then wins the championship game, and then it doesn't really matter because I think they have 3 losses, and so they're not getting in.
Right. It would almost be work in JMU's advantage for that to happen, because if USF and Memphis both run the table and then they play each other in the championship game, the winner's probably going to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and East Carolina hosts Memphis in a couple weeks, which will be a huge game. They do play at UTSA and at FAU the last 2 games of the season, so those are 2 tough road trips. But, like, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think the AAC is the biggest threat. And, look, if Navy beats Notre Dame this weekend, which probably won't happen, but if Navy beats Notre Dame, they vault ahead of a lot of people too, potentially, because now they're 8-1. You assume they're going to win the Army game, so that makes them 9-1, and maybe they split with South Florida and Memphis, and then they're 10-2. They would have a really good resume, probably better than JMU does.
Man, group of 5, mid-major Matt. He's really knowing his stuff here. And then it comes down to just last question here, Matt, before we shut it down. Like, if it is JMU that gets in, you know, they're likely to be the 12 seed, maybe the 11, depending on what happens. But then you're going to be on the road, tough environment, that first round game. Who knows? It could be in Athens, Georgia. It could be at any of these big programs. You think they got a shot to, like, shock the world?
I mean, remember, you did just talk about when it came to the Louisville game that it took a late Isaac Brown rushing touchdown to kind of take advantage of everything. And this was week 2. And this is when JMU foolishly was going with the 2 quarterback system because they used Alonzo Barnett, and then they brought Matthew Sluka in as the +1 runner, and they did it way too much. There was no flow, and the offense didn't look good. Now they've settled on Alonzo Barnett as the quarterback here. He's getting further and further away from the devastating injury he had that had ended his last season. So, like, defensively, I think JMU can keep them in any sort of game. It's whether the offense shows up, which I think they can in certain situations. Because let's remember, Drew, if they're playing Ole Miss or if they're playing Georgia, are they really taking preparation that week seriously? Oh, JMU's coming to our place. Like, are they really going full, aggressiveness here with the G5 champion coming to their building? Like, I don't think so. And so I think if they're not focused, JMU's defense can bring the score down, which means like a turnover or 2 can turn that game either way.
Man, lot to still happen in college football, guys. This is Every Game on the Board, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Every Game on the Board. We're hitting every single game on the FBS board. This is the episode 2 with Matt Josephs from ESPN Richmond, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. A great follow there. Obviously knows his college football, particularly in the group of 5, breaking it down. Matt, anything else you wanted to throw out there before we shut it down?
No, just keep looking at the weather reports, keep watching the participation reports. All that stuff's very important, and take advantage of teams who really don't have anything to play for the rest of the season. The Oklahoma States, the Kent States, the Akrons and stuff like that. Like, find the teams that have nothing to play for and take advantage of them however you can.
For Matt Josephs, I'm Drew Martin. That's going to do it for episode 2. We'll be back with Robbie Vino shortly. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.